So this is just a quick tutorial on how to use our brand new Cibsin powered HGB A1C dashboard. Um, Once you arrive here, you will notice that none of the data indicators are lit up in any way, shape, or form. Um, you'll also see, as you scroll down here, quite a few different aggregated filters that you can use in order to filter the data. So starting from the left here, we have the facility, which is basically broken down into our 3 academic teaching clinics, which is 1, 2, and 18. I believe Sunridge is 1, CTC is 2, and South is 18. And then moving over to the right, we have all of our physicians. Now you'll notice here they're listed by integer value. And that is because each one of the physicians is actually de-identified as part of their Cibsin agreement. So if you're a physician watching this, you should probably have your own Cibsin identifier assigned to you, and you should know what it is. So you'll be able to de-identify yourself, but you won't be able to identify other physicians. So as we scroll through here, you can see there's quite a few different physicians that are available here. Moving over to the right, we have age group. And so this would be looking at what particular patients' age groups we wanted to filter the data for. And so they're broken down into logical categories. Very simple and straightforward. Over here on the right, we have the A1C status. So this basically is telling you whether the A1C has been done, whether it's been done within 2 years, not done within 2 years, or not done at all. This is obviously pretty evident just based on the values in each one of these filters. And then moving down, we've got our actual Cibsin conditions. So these are the particular diseases that are actually a part of the surveillance network and diseases that they focus on specifically. So these ones are very straightforward here. So we can filter for either one or many of these different conditions. Over here we have the different test result values, and so this is actually a unique list from our database which tells you all of the different individual values that we've received from the actual test itself, and you can also select multiple test result values for yourself, which I'll show you how to do soon. The test result categories, this is also quite straightforward, so we can actually break these down into result categories. You have less than or equal to 7, between 7 and 8, or greater than 8. So there's 3 categories available to you, and you can choose those as you see fit. Quite obviously, these will also be mutually exclusive, so trying to select multiples of these will work, and so you're encouraged to try that. We have gender as well, male or female, quite straightforward. And then we have the year of the last A1C test that was completed. And so if you scroll down a little bit further here, you'll see that we have the age group distribution visualization. And so what this will do is show you what the actual age group distribution is depending on what filter values you've selected up here. Moving forward, we have for the panel of patients you've selected based on your filter criteria above, whether or not that particular cohort has had the HbA1c test done or not. And so depending on what your filter criteria is above, you'll either see this basically full, empty, or somewhere in the middle. Over here we have the result distribution. So this is similar to the aggregated filter up here where you have the test result categories. And so depending on what filters you select, you will see what the particular breakdown of HbA1c results are for that particular cohort. And then we also have something called the diabetes patient breakdown. And so basically what this is telling you what percentage of the patients who match your cohort actually have a diabetes diagnosis. And so since this particular dashboard is focused mainly around HbA1c testing and results, this is the most relevant here. And you'll see in further tutorials when we focus on other ASAP maneuvers that some of these visualizations will actually change. So we'll save that for later. Down here we have our disease group distribution. And so what this is basically, again, with the cohort that you selected based on the filter criteria above, you'll be able to tell what particular disease groups those patients fall into, whether they're multiples or none. And so I'll just quickly scroll back up here and give you guys a quick demonstration on how to actually grab some data with a particular age group of patients we want to look at. So we'll keep it very simple and start with, we'll say 20 to 30. And so this is going to give me all of the patients through all 3 sites which fall into the age group of 20 to 30. So in order to activate this, the first thing I need to do is highlight the particular filter value and then just click anywhere outside of the box and you'll see it gray out. And as soon as you see that, the query is actually happening in the back end. And so here you'll see we've got 43 physicians returned, which would be actually all of the physicians because we haven't specified anybody in particular. The active patients that fall into this demographic are roughly 3,087. We're looking at all 3 sites because we haven't selected any sites here. And it looks like we've had 9% of those patients with the HbA1c test completed, and 3% of the patients with HbA1c done within 2 years. So if we scroll down a little bit further, in our age group distribution, we'll see that we're looking at particularly age group 20 to 30. And so we've got 3 different criteria here. The first is the physician level, and so this is, right now, this dashboard is defaulting to one particular physician, but once it's made available to everybody else, the physician level aggregation will show you the results from whatever physicians you've selected here. So we'll get more into that later. Then we actually have the site level, so this is defaulting to CTC at the moment. So at CTC we have roughly 1,700 patients which fall into the 20 to 30 age group demographic, and throughout the department we have roughly 3,087. And so that's the difference between these 3 aggregations here. And you can actually choose which one you want to see more prominently. So if you want to just see the department, all you have to do is unclick those associated filter values, and they will disappear, and likewise you can click them to make them reappear. So moving further down, it looks like we have roughly 9.2% of the patients which have the A1C done, and so you'll see here the 9% value. This one is a little bit more accurate, so we've got it to the tenths value in the decimal percentage area, and then we have roughly 90.8% with it not done, which is obviously the inverse value there. Moving over to the right, we have quite a few of the patients that haven't had it done, so you'll see a lot of them with no result. And then for the ones that have had it done, it looks like we have nobody in the between 7 and 8 range, and we have nobody above the 8 range. We have everybody between below 7 or equal to 7. So these are the actual values here, and their breakdowns are similar to what you see over here as far as the different filters are concerned. So very straightforward there. So just to be clear, extra clear I guess, the 90.8% would fall into this, and the 9.2 would fall into this category here. So moving down, we can see the percentage of those patients that actually have diabetes. So that would be the breakdown of all of the patients who fall into that demographic. What percentage of them actually have diabetes? So scrolling down here, you can see out of the roughly 3,000 patients, about 1% of them are diabetic. And then moving down, we can see the disease group distribution for that particular demographic. And so for the patients between the age group of 20 to 30, you have 832 throughout the department that suffer from depression. We have 29 that suffer from diabetes. We have 57 from epilepsy, or that suffer from epilepsy, I should say. And herpes, 4 of them fall into that category. Hypertension, 44. We have quite a few healthy patients with no diseases. Nobody in that age group has any osteoarthritis. Nobody has any Parkinson's, which is to be expected for that lower age group between 20 and 30 there. And then we actually have 257 patients who suffer from pediatric asthma. And so what the value of this is just the ability to basically isolate a particular cohort and then look at different comorbidities that exist within that particular cohort. So this one might be found extremely useful, and you're encouraged to try it out yourself. So we'll get a little bit more complicated here, and we'll maybe add in a few other demographics. So we'll change our age group now from 20 to 30 to include 20 to 30, 30 to 40, and 40 to 50. So effectively the 20 to 50 age group. And so in order to do that on a Mac, all you have to do is hold down the Shift button, click to highlight multiple filter values. And on a PC, hold down it is actually the same on a PC, hold down the Shift character or the Shift key in order to highlight multiple filter values. And so once you're done there, click out and you'll see the data update. And so now we've got quite a few more patients that fall into the demographic, obviously, because we're looking at 3 different age groups. The sites are still the same, and our HbA1c value has obviously increased with the higher demographic value, and then we also have our HbA1c done. The value has increased there as well. And so scrolling down, now we can see we're looking at 3 different age groups. We can see the number of patients who fall into each one of those age groups, which would obviously add up to this value here. And then we can scroll down and look a little bit further into that particular cohort. So now you can see our HbA1c done status has increased to 19.1%, which means we have obviously more diabetic patients in that particular age group. And the HbA1c not done has decreased, respectively. And so this has stayed the same as far as the result distribution is concerned. It looks like we have nobody in that particular age group that has an HbA1c between 7 and 8 or an HbA1c above 8. And we have a few more patients here now that have the HbA1c less than or equal to 7. Scrolling down from there, we can see that our diabetes patients, the number of diabetes patients has increased, obviously. And so the percentage now is roughly 2.7% of the 11,000 patients that we had above. 97.3 do not have diabetes. Then scrolling down, we can have a look at some of the comorbidities in that particular age group. And so we have a few patients with depression, got some with diabetes, we have some epilepsy happening, some herpes, some hypertension, and quite a few healthy patients, it looks like, as well. And now we're starting to see some osteoarthritis, popping up here. Parkinson does not seem to be evident, and we still have the pediatric asthma. So it starts to get a little bit of fun, once you start playing with this thing. So now we can say, let's remove all of these filters that we've selected. So in order to do that, we'll just click once, left click, in order to highlight one particular filter value. And then all we have to do is hit either, if you're on a Mac, it's Command and then click, and if you're on PC, it's Control and click. And once you click out of there, basically we've unselected all of those filter values. And so we have refreshed all of our data, and we're not looking at those particular demographics anymore. So now we can have a little bit of fun, and we can start looking at some disease group distributions. So we'll say, let's look at all of our patients with dementia. So clicking out of there, we see that our data indicators have updated, and now dementia. So inherently, you would assume, looking at dementia, that we're looking at a higher age group of patients, and so you can see that the diabetes value has increased here for HbA1c being done, and HbA1c within 2 years has also increased. We have fewer patients here, so we've got roughly 333 patients that suffer from dementia throughout the department. And if I scroll down, you'll see that the age groups that are associated with dementia it looks pretty indicative. It looks like we do have one patient in the department who suffers from dementia in the age group of 10 to 20, one in the age group of 20 to 30, 5 in the age group of 30 to 40, and then as we get a little bit older, you can see dementia start to increase throughout the patients based on their age group. So moving forward, 4 patients above the age of 100 with dementia. So now we can scroll down and we can see that this has changed dramatically. So we have quite a few patients in that demographic that have diabetes, and it's roughly 50-50 as far as how many have actually had the test done and how many haven't had it done. And so now we're starting to see some values for the HbA1c above 8. We're starting to see some patients with HbA1c between 7 and 8, and quite a few patients here with HbA1c less than or equal to 7, and also quite a few actually, with no result at all. And so those would be indicative of the individuals who most likely do not have diabetes and fall into the HbA1c percentage of 58%, not having the test completed. So now we can break down the diabetes diagnosis between that cohort or inside of that cohort. And so you can see here we roughly have 21.3% of those 333 patients, I believe it was, that are diagnosed with diabetes. And so roughly 78.7 that don't have it. And so we can move further down to the disease group distribution, and you can see that we've asked for specifically dementia patients. So that's the only disease that we're looking at. So there are no comorbidities that are associated with it because we haven't asked for any. And so if we wanted to, we could say, let's look at our patients with dementia and depression. Sure, let's try that. So watch these values update, and so now that we've added depression in there, we have roughly 6,000 patients. And so the process is now very similar as it was before. And we can now look at the age groups. So you can see that we're now starting to see a lot more patients here in the younger ages with the depression as well. So because we have a combination of depression and dementia, the number of patients that we're seeing here is obviously increased. And so you can analyze the breakdowns by age group associated with those comorbidities as you see fit. Very similar here, moving down, similar here as well. And once again, we've looked at just specifically patients with dementia and depression. And so those are the values of the patients that have those two comorbidities. So to make things a little bit more fun, we can start doing some other good things like let's look at, we'll say, how are our patients doing in the 50 to 70 range? And we want to look at males only. So once we finish clicking our criteria, we click out of the box and we get an updated value. So here's all our male patients, age 50 to 60 and 60 to 70, so effectively 50 to 70, roughly 3,100 patients. HbA1c, about half of them done, and then HbA1c done within 2 years, roughly 30%. And so we'll just scroll down as we did before, and because we selected those particular age groups specifically, we're only seeing results there, so we can see those values. And then as we scroll down, it looks like we're in roughly 50-50 again as far as whether the HbA1c test has been done or not. We got our test results here for that particular cohort. We've got how many fall into the diabetes category and don't, and then we've got all of our comorbidities for that particular age group. And so you'll see that there are quite a few more here because we haven't specified what particular comorbidities or morbidities we've decided to look at specifically. So it's telling us what the entire breakdown is of the disease group distribution for that 50 to 70 male patient cohort.